A very good morning to everyone. I would like to request the Honorable Chief Guest and the distinguished guest to kindly proceed for the lighting of the lamp ceremony to begin the inaugural session of the 3-day International Conference on Observation and Reality, Cosmology and Consciousness, Series 7, which is jointly being organized by the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, Dharamsala, and the Namgyal Institute of Tibetology. May I now request Geshe Hakdor, Director, Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, Dharamsala, to kindly deliver his welcome and introductory address.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Sikkim, Tashi Densapa, Director of Namgyal Institute of Tibetology, specially invited guests, our science and Buddhist scholars who are especially here to be the spirit of this conference. I would like to, first of all, say Tashi Dilek and welcome you all to this 3-day conference. Let me at the outset say that being a human is something fantastic. At some level or the other, most human beings do take on the responsibilities of others. For example, a mother and father take on the responsibility of their children. So wherever the human comes in, there comes the taking on the responsibility of others. The more you take on responsibility for develop as a person, the less you care about your own problems and the more courage you develop. You will find yourself being able to relate to people in a completely different way. So your emotions, which are now very self-centered, self-cherishing, will begin to get transformed more or less spontaneously, automatically, and you will find the quality of your life changes. Sharing this responsibility, Namgyal Institute of Tibetology and Library of Tibetan Works and Archives have organized this conference. This conference, as you are aware, is cosmology, consciousness in general, and particularly physics and philosophy, and more particularly observation and reality. The Greek philosophers before Socrates were predominantly concerned with speculation regarding the physical world, such as the nature of matter or the shape of the universe. Such inquiries became known in the Middle Ages as natural philosophy, what we now call science. The famous philosopher Bertrand Russell, one of his key assertions is that science education is key to attaining a future of happiness and democracy, and I personally believe that. It would be possible by organization and science to feed and house the whole population of the world, not luxuriously, but sufficiently to prevent great suffering. All this is of such immeasurable value to human life that we dare not oppress the sort of education which will tend to bring it about. In such an education, applied science will have to be the chief ingredient. Without physics and physiology and psychology, we cannot build a new world. It seems befitting to revisit Galileo's monumental impact on the rift between science and religion as he dethroned Earth from the center of heavens with his discovery of heliocentrism, sparking the scientific revolution. The difference between science and philosophy, according to some, but this is quite interesting, is that scientists learn more and more about less and less until she knows everything about nothing. Whereas a philosopher learns less and less about more and more until he knows nothing about everything. The famous thinker Carl Sagan refutes the popular perception of science as rationally objective, a vessel of capital T, which means truth, reminding us that every scientific concept and theory was birthed by a subjective, fallible human mind. All observations are made from distinct places and times, and in science, no less than art or philosophy by particular individuals. Although philosophy isn't a fiction, it can be more personal, creative, and open, a kind of counterbalance for science, even as it argues that science, with its emphasis on a kind of impersonal materialism, provide a crucial reality check for philosophy and a tendency to over-theorize that is inimical to the scientific spirit. Ideally, in the search of truth, science and philosophy, the impersonal and autobiographical can keep each other honest in a kind of open circuit. Science's spirit is philosophical. We need to accept that. It is the spirit of cautioning, of curiosity, of critical inquiry, combined with fact-checking. It is the spirit of being able to admit you are wrong, of appealing to data, not authority, which does not like to admit it is wrong. So in this regard, Buddhists also have much to learn. But philosophy, although it historically gives rise to experimental science, sometimes preserves as a distinct mode of sustained questioning that sharply distinguishes it from modern science, which can be too quick to provide answers. According to Bertrand Russell, philosophical conceptions are a product of two factors: one, inherited religious and ethical conceptions, the other called the scientific. Since thus Buddhism is a combination of both speculative and scientific philosophy, it advocates the scientific method and pursues that to a finality that may be called the rationalistic. In it are to be found answers to such questions of interest as what are mind and matter, of them which is of great importance. Is the universe moving towards a goal? What is the man's possession? Is there living that is noble? It takes up where science cannot lead because of the limitation of the latter's physical instruments. Its conquests are those of the mind. In the case of the physics, the beauty of physics is summed up in one simple fact: a child can ask questions that no professor can answer. Searching out these big questions in physics is rather like looking for a hair in a haystack. When it comes to physics, it appears there is no such thing as small question. With such big issues at its fingertip, it is small wonder that the most iconic scientists of our generations have been immersed in physics, like Einstein and Richard Feynman. I believe that we should demand that people try in their own minds to obtain for themselves a more consistent picture of their own world, because we have learned that by trying to put the points of view that we have in our head together and comparing one to the other, we make some progress in understanding and in appreciating where we are and what we are. I would like to quote from His Holiness' book, Universe in a Single Atom, where he says very eloquently the need for having this kind of dialogue. But I have nonetheless thought deeply about science, not just its implications for the understanding of what reality is, but the still more important questions of how it may influence ethics and human values. The specific areas of science that I have explored most over the years are subatomic physics, cosmology, and biology, including neuroscience and psychology. I have often wondered about the interface of key Buddhist concepts and major scientific ideas. My confidence in venturing into science lies in my basic belief that as in science, so in Buddhism, understanding the nature of reality is pursued by means of critical investigation. If scientific analysis were conclusively to demonstrate certain claims in Buddhism to be false, then we must accept the findings of the science and abandon those claims. I am an internationalist at heart. One of the qualities that has moved me most about scientists is their amazing willingness to share knowledge with each other without regard for national boundaries. I felt an implicit recognition in this spirit of the oneness of humanity and a liberating absence of proprietorship in matters of knowledge. The motivation for my interest in science is more than merely personal. It was clear to me and others in the country that one of the underlying causes for Tibet's political tragedy was its failure to open to modernization. Now in exile, the refugee children education includes science education for the first time. The essence of modernization lies in the introduction of modern education, and the heart of modern education there must be command of science and technology. That personal commitment led me even to monastic colleges to introduce science into their curriculum. So the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives over the last now nearly 20 years has been organizing various science workshops, conferences of this type, science exhibitions, publications of science textbooks, as well as for the first time we publish a bilingual science dictionary. And His Holiness continues by saying there is almost no area of human life today that is not touched by the effects of science and technology. By that he is also saying the more you have impact on the lives of other people, the more you have to bear the responsibility. Yet we are very clear about the place of science, yet we are clear about the place of science in totality of human life, what exactly it should do and by what it should be governed. We are not clear about that. This last point is critical because unless the direction of science is guided by a consciously ethical motivation, especially compassion, its effects may fail to bring benefit. They may indeed cause great harm, change my attitude from curiosity to a kind of urgent engagement. And personally, from childhood, I have been practicing compassion for all sentient beings, as is the core of Buddhist teaching. But I found science a compelling way to communicate insights gleaned from my own spiritual tradition. So engaging with this powerful force has become a kind of spiritual injunction as well. The central question, central for the survival and well-being of our world is how we can make the wonderful development of science into something that offers altruistic and compassionate service for the needs of humanity and other sentient beings with whom we share this earth. Science as a discipline and Buddhism as a system of thought both share a basic commitment to openness and initial skepticism. No subject was off limits. Science also seeks truth, not only as an end in itself, but also to alleviate illness and suffering through ethical application of technology. In Buddhism, we talk about ignorance as the root cause of suffering, thereby saying that it is through removing ignorance that you will be able to bring peace. And in science also, the word science comes from the Latin word scientia, which also means knowledge. But I believe knowledge with regard to removing physical related sufferings. In a way, the dialogue between science and spirituality is a struggle to integrate the sensory and the supersensory. The physical and metaphysical has been addressed with varying degrees of sensitivity by some of history's greatest minds. Modern science at one particular time got divorced from metaphysics, but now more and more when it goes into the deeper layers of physical realities, the more it seems to be coming back to metaphysics, where there are areas like subtle mind which right now cannot be analyzed and studied by even the sophisticated machines. And then we have this terrible struggle to try to explain things to people who have no reason to want to know. But if they want to defend their own point of view, they will have to learn what yours is a little bit. I mean, nobody writes trying to explain the inconsistencies between the theological views and the scientific views. So the point is some of the crucial points needs to be discussed without being modest and friendly. Richard Feynman also reiterates a crucial point about the nature and purpose of science and critical thinking, the role of ignorance and the importance of embracing uncertainty met with enormous resistance in a culture conditioning for grasping at answers. A scientist is never certain. We all know that. Buddhists sometimes think that they are quite sure about many things, but I personally feel that we should join the scientists in terms of maintaining this uncertainty and maintaining doubt. We know that all our statements are approximate statements with different degrees of certainty, that when a statement is made, the question is not whether it is true or false, but rather how likely it is to be true or false. We must discuss each question within the uncertainties that are allowed. We absolutely must leave room for doubt, or there is no progress and there is no learning. There is no learning without having to pose a question, and a question requires doubt. People search for certainty, but there is no certainty. Just 2 days back, I gave a talk in the Namgyal Institute, and the topic that I chose was how to find happiness in an uncertain world. And most of your actions are based on incomplete knowledge, and you really don't know what it is all about, or what the purpose of the world is, or know a great deal of other things. It seems it is possible to live and not know, but that is not enough. Richard Feynman concludes by doing what he does best, bridging science and philosophy to expand the specific questions into a broader meditation on human existence. So today, we are not very well off. We don't see what we have done too well. Men, philosophers of all ages have tried to find the secret of existence. And there are 100,000 answers with regard to the question of secret of existence, the meaning of it all. Because if they could find the real meaning of life, then all this human effort, all this wonderful potentiality of human beings could then be moved in the correct direction, and we would march towards with great success. So to decide upon the answer is not scientific. In order to make progress, one must leave the door to the unknown ajar only. We are only at the beginning of the development of the human race, of the development of human mind, of intelligent life. We have years and years in the future. It is our responsibility not to give the answer today as to what it is all about, to drive everybody down in that direction and to say this is a solution to it all, because we will be chained then to the limits of our present imagination. We will only be able to do those things that we think today are the things to do. Whereas if we leave always some room for doubt, some room for discussion, and proceed in a way analogous to the sciences, then this difficulty will not arise. It is because of these important issues and concerns we have taken the topic of this discussion here in this conference as observation and reality. In order to ensure greater happiness, we need to bridge the gap between observation and reality, or appearance and reality. What you observe may not be the truth, as the great Buddhist teacher Thongme Sangpo says, when you encounter an attractive object, see it like a beautiful rainbow in the summer, even though it may appear beautiful at a distance, but it is not truly existent. Therefore, give up craving and attachment. I would like to conclude by saying that material progress alone cannot solve the many problems we face today at many levels. These problems will also not be solved by science or religion, as they are only tools in the hands of human beings. The solution, therefore, will not come from science nor from religion. Solution is to come from man himself or herself. We can only solve the problem by becoming more holistic, uniting, harmonious, inclusive, and open-minded, and at the core of which is wisdom, that is understanding the way things are, and a shared responsibility, compassion towards all sentient beings. And we should be able to do that by seeing the fundamental sameness in all of us. It is our aspiration as the organizers of this conference that this conference makes it a small contribution towards that end. I once again thank you, Your Excellency, for gracing this occasion, and thank you everyone. Sarva Mangalam.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening words. Now I would like to request the Honorable Governor, President, Namgyal Institute of Tibetology, to kindly address the gathering.
नामग्याल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी और तिब्बती पुस्तकालय व संग्रहालय धर्मशाला के संयुक्त आयोजन पर विज्ञान और चेतना साथ अवलोकन की वास्तविकता विषय पर सम्मेलन हो रहा है। इसमें उपस्थित यहाँ निदेशक नामग्याल इंस्टीट्यूट टेक्नोलॉजी श्री टासी देनसापा जी, निर्देशक तिब्बती पुस्तकालय व संग्रहालय श्री गेसो रागदो जी, श्री गेसो थापके जी, श्री अनिल अनंत स्वामी जी, श्री थियोडर होडाप जी, श्री ब्रिस जोन्स, मेयर गंटोक श्री शक्ति सिंह जी, विभिन्न विभागीय प्रमुख और विशिष्ट अधिकारीगण, शिक्षक, विद्यार्थी, मठों से पधारे आदरणीय लामागण, प्रेस और मीडिया के मेरे मित्रों, प्यारे भाइयों, मित्रों और बच्चों, नामग्याल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेप्टोलॉजी गंटोक और तिब्बती पुस्तकालय की व संग्रहालय धर्मशाला द्वारा संयुक्त रूप से आयोजित विज्ञान और चेतना साथ अवलोकन और वास्तविकता पर 3 दिवसीय सम्मेलन का उद्घाटन के इस अवसर पर आप सबसे मिलने का सौभाग्य मिला है, इसके लिए मुझे प्रसन्नता है। भारत और विदेशों से बहुत विद्वानों और वैज्ञानिकों के साथ आने और इस तरह के प्रासंगिक विषय पर चर्चा, अवलोकन और वास्तविकता सभी प्रतिभागियों और पर्यवेक्षकों के लिए बहुत ही फायदेमंद होगा, ऐसा मेरा मानना है। जीवन के विविध समस्याओं को हल करने हेतु वास्तविकता को ढूंढना और बौद्ध दर्शन और विज्ञान दोनों का एक अहम हिस्सा रहा है। यह प्रसन्नता की बात है कि सिक्किम और दार्जिलिंग के 30 वरिष्ठ बौद्ध भिक्षुक ने इस सम्मेलन से ठीक पहले 1 महीना का विज्ञान विषय का अध्ययन भी किया है। गंगटोक और सिक्किम के लिए यह गौरव की बात है कि इस तरह के सम्मेलन यहाँ आयोजित हो रहा है। इस संस्था का अध्यक्ष होने के नाते मैं तिब्बती पुस्तकालय एवं संग्रहालय धर्मशाला को आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। इस संस्था के साथ आकर विज्ञान और चेतना विषय का यह कार्यशाला यहाँ पर आयोजित किया। मुझे विश्वास है कि यह कार्यशाला सभी बौद्ध प्रतिभागियों के लिए अत्यंत लाभप्रद रहेगा और यह कार्यशाला के बाद आप सब अपना अनुभव सभी को साझा करेंगे। आप सबको ज्ञात है कि मानव मस्तिष्क की क्षमता असीमित है। इस पूरे ब्रह्मांड के अनेक तत्वों को जानने और समझने के लिए विज्ञान के साथ साथ आध्यात्मिक और सूक्ष्म प्राकृतिक परक वस्तुओं को ज्ञान परम आवश्यक है। लेकिन केवल किताबी ज्ञान नहीं, मानव कल्याण, शांति और मानवता का उत्थान हेतु इसका उपयोग अनिवार्य है। नहीं तो ऐसे अध्ययन, कार्यशाला और शोध ग्रंथ का कोई मूल्य नहीं रहेगा। क्योंकि आज जो आवश्यकता है, विज्ञान असीम है, ब्रह्मांड की ताकत असीम है। ब्रह्मांड को जानना और समझने के लिए काफ़ी अपनी जो मानसिकता है उसे बहुत आगे बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता है। इसके लिए अध्यात्म की भी आवश्यकता है। जहाँ पर किताबी ज्ञान प्राप्त कर रहे हैं, वहीं अध्यात्म सबसे ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि अध्यात्म के द्वारा ही आप अच्छी तरह से ब्रह्मांड के बारे में सोच और समझ सकते हैं। इसलिए मैं आशा करता हूँ इस तरह का सम्मेलन और कार्यशाला सिक्किम के युवा शोधकर्ता और आप विद्यार्थियों के लिए उपयोगी सिद्ध होगा। एक बार फिर राज्य के बाहर से आए हुए सभी प्रतिभागियों को सिक्किम में स्वागत करता हूं और कामना करता हूं कि आपका सिक्किम प्रवास स्मरणीय रहेगा। आप सबों को अपने अपने कार्यों में सफलता मिले, इसके लिए मेरी शुभकामना है। और इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं पुनः आप सबों के प्रति, इस संस्था के प्रति शुभकामना व्यक्त करता हूं कि इस भावना से, जिस विचार से लोग शोध कर रहे हैं, उसमें और उसको शोध को आगे बढ़ाते हुए कार्य करें। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय सिक्किम, जय भारत।
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. May I now request the Director, Namgyal Institute of Tibetology, to kindly deliver his word of thanks.
Honorable Governor, distinguished guests, members of the Sangha, secretaries, mayor, all our friends, welcome to this. It is my duty to now give the thanks. So I would like to, in the first instance, thank the Honorable Governor and the President of the Namgyal Institute of Tibetology for inaugurating this conference and taking off time to be with us. Now we also submit our gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because it is his wisdom and vision that provided the directive to all the Tibetan monastic community in India to engage in science and to initiate science training that would eventually support the new horizon in learning of science and Buddhism. And these workshops and conferences are the products or the fruitful products of this wisdom and advice. I would like to also say that the Tibetan Library of Tibetan Works and Archives organized a 4-week introductory science course at the Institute of Tibetology. The intensive 4-week workshop introducing big ideas in science that are known to have connections to Buddhist philosophy from the 3rd to the 28th of September. The topics of this year's workshop included perception, physics, neuroscience, astronomy, cosmology, human health. A total of, as mentioned by the Honorable Governor, the total of 30 monks and 17 different monasteries of Sikkim and Darjeeling participated in this first-time introduction to science. I would like to express our appreciation to all the members of the Library of Tibetan Works and staff members of the Tibetan Works and Archives for their effort for this successful workshop. And also the faculty I would like to name, for instance, Gustav Henderson from the Science and Workshop Wattsville in USA, Kurt Gebelson from the UNESCO Timur, Dr. Christopher Impey from the University of Arizona, Dr. Eric Cutler from the University of Washington, Seattle, Dr. Dedra Buchwald from the Washington State University, Dr. Rich Macklin from the University of Minnesota, and Dr. Linda Shaw, Astronomy Society of the Pacific in the United States. I'd like to thank all the conference presenters who are here with us today, and again to mention a few of them and give a short introduction. It is Dr. Anil Ananthaswamy. He's a journalist and author. He teaches the annual science journalism workshop at the National Center for Biological Science in Bangalore. Dr. Arya Chantasri is a postdoctoral research at the Griffith University in Australia. She graduated with a PhD in physics from the University of Rochester, New York. Wen Khenpo Cheong is a Buddhist scholar and a teacher who retired in 2016 after 30 years of service in the Buddhist philosophical teacher at the Nyingma Institute of Sikkim. Khenpo Cheong has participated in many seminars and conferences within and outside of India. Professor Howard Wiseman is a professor of physics at the Griffith University in Australia. His research is quantum theory, but he also collaborates often with experimentalism. Geshe Lhagdor is the director of the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives at Dharamsala, a distinguished Buddhist scholar. He was originally the English translator for His Holiness the Dalai Lama from 1989 to 2005 and has co-translated several books by the Dalai Lama. Geshe Thabgye is from the Seraj Monastery. He was among the first batch of monks to study at Emory University in Australia. After 3 years study at Emory, he started teaching regular physics classes at his monastery. Professor Theodore Hodop develops and directs education and diversity projects for the American Physical Society. His original scientific work projects for the American was in experimental quantum optics. Professor Ian Durham is a physicist. He is a professor and chair of the Department of Physics at the St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. We would also like to thank the director of the Tibetan Works and Archives and all the members of the staff for their sincere effort in making the workshop a great success, and to all the monks and participants for attending the classes with diligence, and once again our appreciation to the staff members of the Tibetan Library and Works for their relentless effort for preparing this conference also. My appreciation to all the members of the staff of the Namgyal Institute of Tibetology, and particularly to the Joint Director, as she held responsibility on my behalf during my absence. Our thanks also to the Department of Ecclesiastical Department, to the Information and Publicity, and to the Home Department for allowing us to use of the hall, and the members of the Chintan Bhavan staff who have been very, very helpful to us. Our appreciation also to the press and social media and all other departments of the government of Sikkim for their assistance on organizing this conference. Last but not the least, our appreciation to Seeger family and the Templeton Foundation of the United States for their financial assistance for the workshops and conferences. We have now come to an end of the inauguration, and I would like to invite all the members of the delegates and members to come for tea and also to see the exhibition of Thangkas on climate change. Thank you very much.